Watch right now on the Front News Project. A strike on Putin's residence in the Novgorod region. Kremlin fake or a real hunt? The hunt for the cannibal has begun. The war will end in February. On the 26th, exclusive insider information from Kirilo Budanov. And also, Ukrainian weapons are tearing apart the Russian army, and heavy drones are a real hell for the invaders. Fiery, hot, and blazing. Watch frontline footage right now. Greetings, this is Volodymyr Timoshenko with you, and we're starting right away with the most important news. Hysteria in the swamps of civilization. Ukraine tried to attack Putin's state residence with 91 UAVs, meaning all the drones were destroyed. At least that's what Lavrov claims. Now the Kremlin terrorists are promising a strike of invisible force on Kyiv's government quarter in retaliation. Well, the Kremlin will come up with anything to disrupt peace talks. Or did an attack on Putin's lair actually happen? Our journalists have the answers.
Ukrainian drones attacked that very golden residence of Putin in Valdai. This was stated by Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov. He added that 91 drones were allegedly shot down successfully and that there would be immediate retaliation for the attack.
Such severely reckless actions will indeed not go unanswered. The targets and timing for retaliatory strikes by the Russian armed forces have been determined. Given the complete transformation of the criminal Kyiv regime, which has shifted to a policy of state terrorism, Russia's negotiating position will be revised.
Why allegedly? Because there is no evidence to support the claims of the lying Russian criminals, and the president of Ukraine outright denies the attack.
Now the Russians have apparently invented a fake story about an alleged strike on some residents of the Russian dictator so that they have an excuse to continue striking Ukraine, particularly Kyiv, as well as to refuse to take the necessary steps to end the war. A typical deceitful tactic of the Russians, who have already struck Kyiv before, including the building of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine.
The propagandists, as if on cue, began to echo Lavrov in unison, emphasizing that now Russia absolutely must refuse to engage in peace negotiations.
I am now talking about both the US administration and many others, who are focusing their attention essentially to save what remains of Ukraine. Let's call things by their proper names. And right at this very moment, when the points are being discussed, when the plans are being discussed, when words are being chosen, this bloody frenzied tourist rabble is undermining peaceful efforts.
Putin immediately rushed to complain to Trump, and here he was truly horrified. And really, what an outrage it is to strike at the supply of a war criminal who has wiped dozens of cities and hundreds of thousands of innocent people off the face of the earth.
I don't like this, it's not good. I found out this morning. Do you know who told me? President Putin. He said that he was attacked. Don't forget, it was I who stopped the Tomahawk incident. I didn't want that to happen. Because we're negotiating right now, this is a very sensitive period. It's one thing to advance, it's quite another to attack his home. Now is not the right time for any of this. It shouldn't be done. I'm very angry about this.
According to experts, such a statement could have been made deliberately. After the meeting between Trump and Zelensky, the Russian dictator realized that, as they say, the ball is in his court. And now he either has to agree to peace or come up with a new excuse for why not.
If the Kyiv authorities are unwilling to resolve the matter peacefully, we will accomplish all the tasks before us. Through military means, as part of the special military operation.
But this, by the way, is also a problem for us because it's quite obvious that the Russians are preparing a new massive strike right around New Year's, and they will use this case, this fake story about an alleged attack on Putin's residence, possibly even as a justification, say, for example, for striking the government quarter or other significant sites in Ukraine, so they can once again talk about retaliation and spin their favorite narrative.
And overall, this truly suits us perfectly, since it effectively moves us forward toward achieving our ultimate and significant goal, by armed means, of course. In the course of armed struggle,
Of course, the whole thing looks utterly absurd. Hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers are supposed to keep dying, and millions of people on the home front are expected to tighten their belts, all for the sake of Putin's multi-billion-dollar palace, which he has gilded from top to bottom with public funds.
You don't live my life, and you don't understand that it's all about security issues. It's just that when a person is far removed from this, they simply don't notice it. This is an attempt at escalation, but if such weapons are used to strike Russian territory, the response will be very serious, if not outright staggering. Let them think about that.
But one thing is absolutely clear. Putin doesn't want negotiations or peace and will do everything possible to distract Trump's attention, no matter how foolish and obvious it may seem.
Now let's analyze the operational situation on the blazing Pokrovsk front line. Fierce battles are ongoing. On the Pokrovsk front, Russian units attempted to break through the Ukrainian defenses 31 times. In the areas of the settlements of Chorny Lyman, Myrnohrad, Pokrovsk, Kotlina, Udakhna, Molodetska, Dakhna, and Filia, and towards the settlements of Novashakova, Dorozhna, Rodinska, and Hrishina. 2 clashes are still ongoing. The war will end in February, on the 26th. This is the optimal period for making peace between Russia and Ukraine from the perspective of many factors, both on the battlefield and on the home front, for example, regarding the situation with heating. This is exactly what the head of Ukrainian military intelligence, Kirill Budanov, believes. Meanwhile, Putin is showing complete unpreparedness and unwillingness to end the war. So, will the war end in February or not? Let's find out.
A peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia is inevitable, and the optimal moment for signing it will come as early as February 2026. Kirill Budanov admitted this during his latest interview. According to the head of the main intelligence directorate, despite all the Kremlin's assurances that the special military operation is going according to plan, the real situation on the front for Russian soldiers and generals is stalemated. The Russian Federation is not stopping its offensive operation. Yes, they have not achieved the pace they dreamed of, but they are moving forward. However, the real situation at the front is drastically different from the reports that end up on Putin's desk. On paper, in the Kremlin, Budanov explains things are going great for the occupier's army. That's the bunker mentality. And he sees no reason to sit down at the negotiating table, insisting on the complete capture of the Ukrainian regions written into the Russian constitution. This is an attempt to gain full control over the Donetsk region. Maximum, let's say, advancement in the Dnipropetrovsk region and continued operations in the Zaporizhia and Kherson regions, which in principle they have never tried to hide. These are, let's say, their main objectives, along with expanding the size of sanitary zones, buffer zones, call them what you will, along the border. In principle, the task for 2026 is Donbas and Zaporizhia. Zaporizhia, the whole region. This is their dream. But there is no harm in dreaming. The Kremlin immediately pulls itself up. Kirill Budanov. Thanks to the coordinated work of our defenders, it is becoming increasingly difficult for Russian generals to lie about successes at the front. Yes, and Putin himself is no fool. The endless drone attacks on the Russian capital and key oil refineries and fuel infrastructure in Russia are seriously undermining the Kremlin's desire to keep pushing forward in Ukraine. Look at how it's become trendy here to talk about Ukraine's sanctions against the Russian Federation. What is meant are strikes on the fuel and energy complex. Do you understand what loss means? Right now, that figure is about 21% of all oil refining in the Russian Federation and everything related to gasoline production. Can you even imagine what kind of money that is? I don't think you can. Let's put it this way, it's a lot. Just look at everything. The Russian economy is built on this. Oil, gas, and let's say gold. That's it, there's nothing else. Russia has basically entered a steady economic recession since the end of spring. It's not a collapse, but problems are mounting. Take a look at the Russian Federation's budget for 2026. It's, well, as for any state, really. Let's not even call it Russia, let's just say it's some state, whatever. It's catastrophic. All programs have been cut, except for defense, nothing else remains. So they've already made the decision. It's quite an unpopular and difficult one. Very difficult and painful for them. This is yet another explanation regarding the negotiation process. As military analysts assure, with each passing day and every new strike by the Ukrainian armed forces, there are more and more supporters of a ceasefire in the Kremlin. A negotiation process is definitely needed, and there's no way around it. And even though official Russian propaganda keeps repeating on TV 24/7 that the special military operation is going according to plan, both Ukrainian and Russian military personnel understand the reality. The situation at the front is a stalemate, which means it's high time to sit down at the negotiating table. By calculation, this is the most favorable period for both Russia and Ukraine to achieve something. This is connected to military activity, the heating season, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of factors involved. It's possible that right at this moment, working groups from both countries are finalizing a peace agreement. According to military analysts, many factors point to this. However, this is not being made public. When it comes to negotiations, if we want to succeed, not just in our case, but as a general rule for achieving a good or at least somewhat acceptable result in any negotiation process, the key principle is silence. Maintaining silence. No negotiations in the world that failed to maintain silence, especially those dealing with very complex issues like obviously the war between Russia and Ukraine, have ever succeeded. Without adhering to a regime of silence, they have always failed.
Knowing Kirilo Budanov, I can say with complete confidence, this is a man who, like the wind, never makes empty promises. So it is quite possible that in the coming months we will see the long-awaited ceasefire and an end to the bloodshed in which the Russian army has to date lost more than 1.2 million soldiers killed and wounded.
And now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the Alexandrovsk front. The enemy is becoming more ferocious here as well. On the Alexandrovsk front, Ukrainian units have repelled 15 enemy attacks on our positions. These took place near the settlements of Yalta, Vishnevaya, Alexandrogorad, Verbovoye, Privolnoye, Rybnoe, and in the direction of the settlement of Andreevka and Klevtsevo. Ukrainian weapons are tearing apart the Russian army. On the front lines, more affordable radio-controlled FPV drones are being used, which, according to Ukrainian estimates, have caused the majority of occupier casualties in 2025. Even in terrorist Russia, they have admitted that they are lagging behind Ukraine when it comes to heavy drones. Our journalists have the details. A new level and scale. Ukraine is accelerating the development of its own defense industry and preparing to introduce new artillery, missile, and drone systems. More than 50% of the weaponry in the Ukrainian army is domestically produced, which not only allows them to destroy the enemy on the front lines, but also to strike deep into Russia. Today, Ukraine is truly one of the foremost leaders, and I would even confidently say a significant trendsetter, in the sophisticated production of advanced long-range drones, powerful ballistic weapons, precise cruise missiles, and innovative unmanned aerial vehicles. In some respects, of course, I am perhaps getting a little ahead of myself, but we can already quite confidently say that Ukraine has successfully managed not only to significantly advance its own impressive program, in terms of the use of aerial strike drones, up to the scale of systematic deployment deep into the rear of the Russian Federation, as well as unmanned boats and maritime-type drones in the Black Sea, which have completely blocked the Black Sea for the Russian occupiers.
The Ukrainian armed forces are successfully attacking military targets in the Russian Federation. Ukrainian drones have delivered a historic blow to Russia's oil industry, paralyzing 38% of its refineries and creating an unprecedented crisis in the fuel market. Since the start of the full-scale war, Ukraine has ramped up weapons production and the implementation of new technologies, which are already being used on the front lines. The armed forces of Ukraine have begun using Sapson ballistic missiles of Ukrainian production to strike the enemy. Ukraine has also improved the effectiveness of its Neptune and Flamingo missile strikes. More than 500 Ukrainian companies are involved in the development and production of UAVs. The equipment is tested in combat conditions every day. Ukraine's defense industry can produce up to 8 million drones per year, provided there is sufficient funding. FPV drones, bomb-carrying scouts, interceptors, tactical kamikaze drones, and fiber-optic drones.
Russia is significantly behind in this area, while Ukraine is actively developing its own new types for various purposes with different characteristics. And that says a lot. It speaks to a much broader perspective on the technical and technological possibilities for solutions within a specific component of long-range strike drone weaponry.
Currently, the number of FPV drones on the Ukrainian side exceeds the number of such drones used by the Russian occupiers. Moreover, Russia has admitted that it is lagging behind Ukraine in the field of heavy drones.
Indeed, as of today, Ukraine is far ahead of Russia when it comes to the use of strike drones. I'll go even further. Ukraine has a whole range of different types of long-range strike drone modifications, which are used under various conditions or in combination. And what is Russia known for in turn? It is known for simply taking and copying the Iranian Shahed 136 and calling it Geran. And they use it on Ukrainian territory, occasionally modifying the overall concept.
The war has become a powerful catalyst for the development of Ukraine's defense industry. The volume of domestic weapons production has increased dozens of times. Thanks to private companies, Ukraine is able to create innovations in the defense industry and effectively implement them on the battlefield.
Until 2022, we had a very modest military budget. We had limited technology, but nevertheless, thanks to our creativity, we were able to get ahead in a number of areas. Even ahead of Russia, which at the time of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, in a sense, compared to us, they had a much larger, almost unlimited resource. Currently, yes, in a number of missile technologies, we have achieved results that even Russia does not have. Take the Flamingo missile, for example. Even though it's a mobilization type and rather raw product, it already has a base range of 3,000 kilometers, flight range.
All this means that Ukrainian developers have demonstrated the ability to create high-precision weapons that destroy important enemy military targets at great depth.
And now it's time to analyze the current operational situation on the Konstantinovka front. The enemy continues its meat grinder assaults. On the Konstantinovka front, the Russians attacked the defense forces' positions 18 times. The occupiers have concentrated their offensive efforts in the areas of the settlements of Konstantinovka, Alexandra Shultino, Prishevka, and towards Sofievka and Stepanovka. Vladimir Putin believes in the possibility of a complete victory in Ukraine. Thank you. Russian generals and special services, as usual, systematically embellish their reports on the situation at the front. Western media report that Putin regularly meets with trusted associates who inform him that the war is increasingly hurting the economy, but Putin continues to believe in Russia's victory. At military briefings for Putin, the losses of the Ukrainian armed forces are exaggerated, Moscow's resource advantages are emphasized, and tactical failures. Watch our next segment to see how Putin's generals paint victories for their leader while hiding obvious failures.
Russian generals and intelligence agencies embellish reports about the situation at the front for the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin.
The Western military group has taken control of the strategically important city of Kupiansk, which the enemy is unsuccessfully trying to reclaim.
Putin believes that Russia has almost defeated Ukraine, which is why he refuses a ceasefire. This is reported by the Financial Times. Western officials told the publication that, under the influence of fake information coming into the Kremlin, Putin refuses to accept favorable terms for ending the war offered by American President Donald Trump.
Russian military and intelligence agencies regularly provide Putin with reports about the war. These reports exaggerate Ukraine's losses, highlight the advantages of the Russian Federation in terms of resources, and downplay tactical failures.
According to the publication's sources, this optimistic picture presented to the Kremlin dictator during military briefings makes him believe that he can win the war.
Our troops are grinding down the enemy, their formations, and their reserves.
Putin's blind faith. It doesn't change even though he regularly meets with trusted confidants who explain to him how the war is becoming an increasing burden on Moscow's faltering economy.
Russian generals tell Putin what he wants to hear. He wants victories from them, demands victories, and they present these victories to him.
The key figure responsible for informing Putin about the situation at the front is the chief of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, Valery Gerasimov. Encouraged by information that Ukraine would not offer resistance, he led the offensive on Kyiv in February 2022, which ended in failure and a humiliating retreat. In August 2024, Gerasimov reported to Putin that Russia had stopped the advance of Ukrainian defense forces in Kursk. In the Kursk region, although part of the territory was already under the control of Ukrainian troops. On November 20th, Valery Gerasimov announced the capture of Kupiansk.
This situation has been directly caused by the actions undertaken by Russian forces, who have been actively involved in the region, leading to significant developments and consequences that are now being observed and documented by international bodies and independent observers alike.
Since they receive status, funding, and resources, they are the most important people in the state. So why not fabricate victories, especially if their superiors demand them? Later, if anything, we can fix it somehow.
Following Gerasimov, Putin himself continued to talk about Kupiansk and its capture. According to the Russian dictator, Ukrainian forces near Pokrovsk and Kupiansk are blocked. In
the regions of Kupiansk and the strategic city of Krasnoarmysk, the enemy forces have been effectively blocked and completely encircled. By the way, I have thoroughly discussed this critical and sensitive issue with the senior commanders who are in charge of their respective operational groups. They have indicated that they are not at all opposed to the idea of allowing accredited media representatives to enter the designated enemy's encirclement zone, which is currently under their control.
Amidst active hostilities on December 12th, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Kupiansk, Kharkiv region. On social media, he posted a selfie video near a bullet-riddled stele at the city entrance, demonstrating that the Russian side's claims of allegedly full control over Kupiansk do not correspond to reality, and that Kupiansk is controlled by Ukraine.
Today, the Kupiansk direction, our soldiers here are achieving results for Ukraine. The Russians have talked a lot about Kupiansk. We see this. I was there. I congratulated the guys.
And what do Putin's pathetic attempts to explain Zelensky's video look like? Near the stele at the entrance to Kupiansk, which the dictator had previously claimed to have taken. During the live Q&A, Putin repeated that the city is under Russian control and called Zelensky's video a fake.
He's a talented performer, and I say that without any irony. We know this from his movies, even from earlier times, so there's nothing unusual here. They say the stele looks completely different now, but that's not the point. The stele is located about 1 kilometer away from the city itself. So why stand on the threshold?
Come on in. That's absolutely right indeed. If you're going to Kupiansk is completely and firmly under full control, as we have consistently expected.
Military experts confirm that Putin is being systematically lied to about the situation at the front, and in particular about Kupiansk.
The Russians have already claimed 3 times that they have surrounded and captured Kupiansk, or, as they say, that they have liberated it. For this, General Kuzovlev himself, who is the commander of the Western forces, was even awarded the title Hero of the Russian Federation on December 9th.
Meanwhile, ZVN correspondents have started to backtrack and are openly stating that the Russian military is exhausted. Therefore, taking large cities is out of the question.
Believe me, our troops are very, very worn out, tired, exhausted. Everyone who has been there knows this perfectly well.
Meanwhile, Z channels are writing that Ukraine has effectively regained control over the city. Russian forces no longer control Kupiansk.
Judging by this map, the armed forces of the Russian Federation have already lost almost the entire territory of Kupiansk. But at least everyone got their medals. Apparently, in the future, we should expect a third liberation of Kupiansk. The situation has developed where reports were exaggerated, and now all the regiments are being forced to match those reports. the 122nd and 106th are talking about Ina. And from the headquarters, the reconnaissance is also not Pisa. About her, Kupiansk.
According to the Rybar channel, which is affiliated with the Ministry of Defense, the situation in the city for Russian troops has become worse than critical based on their information. Russians are writing that a significant part of the bridgehead on the western bank of the Oskil River, including the villages of Kondrashovka, Rodkovka and Moskovka, as well as the area near the dairy canning plant, have been lost. Also, according to Rybar, in December, one of the units lost almost 1,500 soldiers on the approaches to one of the villages. Back in November, according to the published map of military operations, most of Kupiansk is now under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces, and clashes are continuing only on its northeastern outskirts.
Thanks to the efforts of the Ukrainian Defense Forces, various units and different security agencies, control over Kupiansk has been regained. Now we can observe the development of a rather difficult situation for the Russian occupation forces.
Probably Putin could find some alternative ways to get information if he really wanted to. Obviously, he is satisfied with everything. In other words, he wants to be lied to, and if those lies satisfy him, that's enough. Again, the generals are, in a way, Putin's allies in his internal bureaucratic struggle against all those boring and gloomy economists who constantly tell him that maybe it's time to stop, maybe it's worth considering a ceasefire.
Well, as long as the Russian generals keep painting fake victories for Putin, he continues to believe in this illusion. But on the front lines, the reality is completely different. And that's exactly what we're seeing now in Kupiansk. Well then, now let's move to the Huliaipole direction of the front. The enemy army's bloody rampage continues. And here, in the Huliaipole direction, our defenders stopped 12 enemy attempts to advance in the areas of Huliaipole, Bilohirya, and towards Dobropilia. 3 more firefights are still ongoing. Zaliznikny came under enemy airstrikes. Yes, part of Huliaipole is under the occupiers' control, and the situation is indeed very difficult. This is reported by the Southern Defense Forces. More details about what is happening on the line of contact are coming up in our military review.
Adiga is under attack from Ukrainian drones. Local authorities are not disclosing details of the attack. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported the alleged downing of 3 fixed-wing drones over the region. According to recent videos widely published in various Telegram channels,
the primary objective or goal that we were aiming to achieve was set forth as follows, and it had been established and defined as the main focus of our efforts. The strategically important Kanskoye military airfield, a key operational base, that the ongoing conflict should not primarily be directed against the aircraft themselves, but rather, and more effectively, specifically against their operational bases. This is precisely the point where these assets are at their absolute most vulnerable and exposed.
the raid in Adygea does not appear to be the only recent embarrassment for the Russian Ministry of Defense. On December 27th, their TV channel Zvezda published several videos from Ukrainian Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region, which the ministry has claimed to have captured since the end of November. The footage was supposed to confirm their control over the city, but in one of the videos, a group of Russian soldiers is actually seen retreating. And it was the ZVN correspondents who noticed this.
This is immense pressure being exerted on our valued European partners, on the American government, and indeed on us, the ordinary citizens of Ukraine, to make it seem as though things are truly and utterly bad over there. And there's a parallel, deeply concerning idea being actively pushed forward, suggesting that our own government is deliberately concealing something significant from us.
There are ways to counter drones or simply snow air defense, as our defenders called this video. In it, the occupier, spoiler alert, unsuccessfully tries to shoot down a Ukrainian FPV drone, but in the end, the FPV drone takes out the occupier for good. According to the Southern Defense Forces, part of Huliaipole in the Zaporizhzhia region is under the control of the occupiers. It is noted that the situation is difficult.
Fierce fighting continues there. This direction is important because It leads directly toward Zaporizhzhia, which is the significant regional center. The Russian forces have made several determined attempts throughout this current year to decisively break through to Zaporizhzhia from the southern direction. But there, at that crucial point, they encountered our exceptionally well-fortified and robust defensive line. Therefore, by carefully developing their military operation from the east in the Donetsk region, they have successfully concentrated a sufficiently large number of forces, and thus they are prepared. They began advancing not from the south, but from the east.
Putin is not aware of what is happening at the front. Moreover, his own generals are deceiving him, according to concerned propagandists. And
the man has absolutely no idea what is happening at the front, not since the very beginning of the so-called special military operation.
In fact, that's why, according to your insiders, Putin spouts all the nonsense that he does.
Basically, the general staff is handling things, the general staff is in charge, but now he has started to get involved in these matters which, accordingly, do not correspond to reality, including regarding Kupiansk.
Putin is a highly professional KGB officer, a man who obtains information from various and diverse sources, including while the invading Russian army under the command of Vladimir Putin is profoundly disgracing itself through a series of strategic blunders, logistical failures, and documented atrocities, the resilient and courageous Ukrainian army is valiantly and effectively defending its homeland, systematically destroying the invading enemy forces, inflicting heavy casualties, and demonstrating remarkable tactical prowess and unwavering determination in the face of this unprovoked aggression.
For example, here are some shots from the Serebryansky forest, which is located on the Lyman front line. In these shots, Ukrainian FPV drones are destroying the enemy completely and irreversibly.
That's all for today, but very soon on the Front News program. New unique materials from our journalists and from the hottest spots of the war obtained so that you know the truth. This was Volodymyr Tymoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.